Full Fire and Blood spoilers begin now, including the deaths and betrayals House of the Dragon may still adapt. If you want to discover that ending unspoiled, this is your moment to leave. Because the book tells us how Rhaenyra dies, who orders Aegon's poisoning, and which broken child inherits their war. But House of the Dragon has already dismantled the road that gets them there. Fire and Blood is an in-world history assembled by Archmaester Gildain from competing accounts, especially Grandmaster Munkun, Septon Eustace, and Mushroom, and they disagree whenever certainty would be convenient. The destination is written. Season 4's real question is which version can still happen. Start at Tumbleton, because the show has already rearranged material the book uses for 2 separate battles. Fire and Blood's first Tumbleton is where Hugh Hammer and Ulf White change sides, turn Vermithor and Silverwing against Rhaenyra's cause, and help turn the town into a slaughter. Even the book refuses to give them a clean motive. Mushroom calls them cowards who chose the larger army. Others blame greed for lands and castles. Any secret deal with Larys is left unproven. That uncertainty matters, because the show gives Ulf a sharper stated motive, and gives Hugh a different wound. Ulf answers Larys's offer of Driftmark with a promise that his enemies will burn, murders Daemon's messenger, and turns Silverwing over Tumbleton. The finale itself announces the turn. Hugh has not yet made the same choice. By the end of the finale, he is still inside the battle searching for Kat, then finds her dead in the ruins. Season 4 can still break Hugh toward the book, but the pair no longer reaches betrayal together. In the book, their real reckoning comes at the second Battle of Tumbleton. By then, their green allies fear them. Ulf wants Highgarden, Hugh wants a crown, and the conspirators called the Caltrops decide both men must die. Daeron seals their death warrants before Adam Valerian attacks the camp at night on Seasmoke, determined to prove that Rhaenyra was wrong to name him a traitor. Hugh is killed before he can reach Vermithor. John Roxton offers false condolences, draws Orphanmaker, and cuts him open, while Ulf is so drunk that he sleeps through the battle. Ulf survives the fighting only to meet Hobart Hightower over poisoned Arbor Gold, and when Ulf insists Hobart drink from the same cask, both men die. Daeron's ending is less certain, and that is the gift Season 4 should not waste. One account lets Black Trombo boast that he smashed the prince's face with a morning star. Another gives the kill to an unknown swordsman who may not have known whom he struck. Munkun's preferred version leaves Daeron inside his burning pavilion when it collapses. Only one point is beyond dispute. Daeron dies at Second Tumbleton. The show leaves him unconfirmed in Tumbleton's wreckage, which means it can choose an account or make the contradiction part of the drama. The book's battle kills Seasmoke, Vermithor, and Tessarion. Silverwing alone leaves the field. Adam dies beside Seasmoke, and his tomb later carries one word: loyal. Because Season 3 has already put Daemon and Ulf into its Tumbleton, the show cannot lift the book's configuration wholesale. Then King's Landing turns on Rhaenyra, and Helena's death is the fuse. Season 3 has already killed her. Still pregnant, held captive, and force-fed on Rhaenyra's orders, Helena steps into the open window in the finale's closing montage. The next shot leaves it empty. The book's catastrophe is no longer a Season 4 prediction. It is the fuse Season 4 inherits. In Fire and Blood, Helena spends about half a year in captivity before throwing herself from a window in Maegor's Holdfast and dying on the iron spikes below. Her death is recorded as fact. Why she jumped is uncertain, while the claim she was pushed is a rumor the book argues against. Mushroom's pregnancy claim rests on his discredited brothel queen's tale. Munkun links her despair to executions she may not have seen. Eustace says Mysaria told her of Maelor's death. The streets invent a simpler story. Rhaenyra had Helena thrown from the window. The historian calls that accusation a poisonous slander, notes that Rhaenyra had no clear motive, and gives the accused gold cloak an alibi. The finale has already changed that balance. Rhaenyra held Helena captive and ordered her force-fed while Helena was visibly pregnant. That still does not prove murder, but it makes the rumor dangerously easy to believe. In the book, belief is enough. King's Landing erupts in bloody riot on the night Helena dies, driven by a city that loves her and has come to hate Rhaenyra. The one-handed shepherd does not create every grievance, but he gives the fear a target: the dragons inside the dragon pit. 4 chained dragons are trapped beneath its dome: Shrikos, Morgul, Tyraxes, and Dreamfire. Mob after mob rushes into their fire until all 4 are killed. Dreamfire breaks loose inside the pit, reaches the dome, and brings the weakened roof down. The victory costs the crowd hundreds, or perhaps thousands, because even the chroniclers cannot agree on the number. The political result is clearer. Rhaenyra loses the city, and the illusion that fear can keep her subjects obedient. During the same attack, her son Joffrey apparently tries to reach the pit on Syrax, a dragon who has never accepted another rider, then slides from her back and falls to his death over Flea Bottom. Syrax later descends on the mob and dies too, though the accounts cannot agree how. The show has already toppled the first domino. A beloved princess is dead, a queen's coercion can be recast as murder, and a capital is being asked to call royal violence holy. Season 4 does not need to invent the spark. It needs to show how rumor turns Helena's death into the bill for everything Rhaenyra has done to control the story of her reign. The most famous death in the dance is harder to place, but it has not been erased. Early in the finale, Aemon wakes weak at Harrenhal and says only, "She poisoned me." The show does not identify the culprit in that exchange. By later scenes, he is back on his feet and part of Aegon's plan to find Vhagar and fly to Tumbleton, so his illness does not prove the battle above the God's Eye has been cut. In the book, Daemon waits for Aemond at Harrenhal, and they meet over the God's Eye near sunset. The tales say Caraxes attacks Vhagar from Aemon's blind side, the dragons lock together, and Daemon leaps from one saddle to the other with Dark Sister in hand. In those accounts, he drives the sword through Aemon's blind eye before both dragons crash into the lake. Caraxes crawls ashore and dies. Years later, Vhagar's bones are recovered with Aemon still chained to the saddle and Dark Sister through his eye socket. The body of Daemon is never found, but Gildane dismisses the songs that claim he survived and treats his death as certain. The show has moved Daemon to Tumbleton and briefly weakened Aemond at Harrenhal, but it has also left both men alive, Caraxes in the war, and the search for Vhagar open. The duel is not impossible. Its timetable is. After the riots drive her from King's Landing, Rhaenyra is refused at Rosby, sheltered for one night at Stokeworth, and eventually pays for passage from Duskendale to Dragonstone. She returns to the island, imagining it is the one place where she and Aegon the Younger will be safe. Dragonstone has already been sold out from under her. Ser Alfred Broom, passed over by Rhaenyra and promised rewards by Aegon, has helped the king take the castle. Aegon is crippled, Sunfire is grievously wounded, and neither looks capable of one more victory. Then Aegon orders Rhaenyra delivered to his dragon. Sunfire burns and devours her, while her 10-year-old son watches in horror, unable to move. Eustace supplies the gruesome detail of 6 bites, but the number belongs to his account, not an omniscient camera. This distinction is the whole point of adapting Fire and Blood. The death is fixed, while the way the world remembers it is negotiable. Aegon then returns to King's Landing, not in triumph but in a closed litter, too damaged to climb the Iron Throne. Black armies keep advancing, and the Turncloaks in his court put their plan in motion. His favorite Sweet Arbor Red waits inside the litter. At the Sept, his guards pull back the curtains and find him dead with blood on his lips. The book debates the poison and the hand that poured it, but not the architect. Gildane says the killing was done at Larys Strong's behest. That makes Larys's Season 3 bargain with Ulf more than a side plot. The man building Aegon's return is also the man the book eventually names as the author of his end. Alicent is the other character the show has moved too far for a literal replay. In the book, Rhaenyra chains her at wrist and ankle after taking King's Landing. After Aegon too dies, Alicent is imprisoned again. She survives every one of her children, spends her final year confined to her apartments, and dies during the winter fever. Alicent offered to open the Red Keep and surrender Aegon for safety for herself, Helaena, and Jaehaera. She then escapes to Harrenhal and ends the finale outside Rhaenyra's chains. Her book ending is no longer a prediction. It is a contrast the writers will have to answer. Once Aegon II is poisoned, the Riverlords enter King's Landing and acclaim Rhaenyra's surviving son Aegon. Afterward, Cregan Stark arrives ready to continue the war, then refuses to let the murdered king's killers go unpunished. He is made hand to judge the conspirators, and he conducts the so-called Hour of the Wolf from a wooden bench beneath the Iron Throne. As hand, Cregan condemns both Corlys Velaryon and Larys Strong, but Corlys is spared and most of the other prisoners choose the Night's Watch. Only Sirs Belgrave and Larys die in the rain. Cregan returns the hand's chain the next day and announces his return to Winterfell. This is not a Stark takeover. It is the moment the realm forces a legal ending onto a war that has already devoured its claimants. The public ending is a wedding. 11-year-old Aegon the Younger marries 8-year-old Jaehaera, Aegon II and Helena's last surviving child, joining the two rival branches. Fire and Blood calls that marriage the end of the dance and the beginning of Aegon III's melancholy reign. That is not reconciliation. It is two traumatized children being arranged into the shape of peace. Even that image is temporary. Jaehaera dies 2 years later after falling from the same holdfast onto the same spikes that killed Helena, and Aegon later marries Daenerys Velaryon. If Season 4 ends at the first wedding, it must not sell the tableau as healing. The war is over, but the damage has simply inherited the crown. That is the ending Fire and Blood actually promises. Not a winner, but a chain of disputed deaths ending with children too broken to celebrate. House of the Dragon has changed the route at Tumbleton, Harrenhal, and around Alicent, yet the surviving paths may still point toward the same cost. Season 4 should keep the book's destination, only if it earns it from the characters the show has created. Would you rather see that ending preserved? Or watch the adaptation choose a new price? Tell me which change would cross the line. Subscribe so you never miss the next book versus screen deep dive, because the page usually gets there first. Drop a comment below, what adaptation should we break down next?